Welcome back, everybody, to Bleeding Cool's weekly recap of Fear the Walking Dead Season 4. This guy right here, Ray Fluke Television Beat Writer, welcoming you back again for our second episode of the fourth season review. As I've told you before, I'm approaching this as a new viewer. Total confession, I did start watching Fear the Walking Dead in the very beginning. I believe I caught the first 3 episodes. And again, in interest of total fairness, I lost interest in the series. It just wasn't capturing it for me. I just wasn't vibing off of it like I was The Walking Dead. But after all the buzz and everything from Season 3 and the fact that they really sold Season 4 as a great way for both Walking Dead viewers and new viewers to get on board the season, I decided to give it a shot. And so far, so good. Great season premiere because it segued in Morgan and introduced us to John Dorie and to Althea. Again, which I thought was a great start. My concern for this episode was, okay, as a new viewer, are you going to hit me with a lot of stuff about the returning characters that I should know and I don't, and I'm going to feel very, very bad about? No, they didn't, actually. They gave us some teases. They gave us some things for me to do a little research on, but I have to say, what I was expecting a little bit of a sophomore slump drop down in the second episode. But as a new viewer, again, it was old school Walking Dead in the sense that by the time the hour was over, I was like, wow, the hour's over already. And again, I don't know if I'm viewing it differently than maybe long-term Fear the Walking Dead fans are. But from my perspective, again, solid second episode. Another Day at the Diamond is the name of the episode. And again, as we saw at the end of last episode, we are concentrating on our main returning characters at this point. I have my cheat sheet here because I want to make sure I get all the plot points, but also to touch upon some of the things in my review. As I said, very quality episode. If I apply the 6-episode rule, this is 2 for 2. I really like where they're going with it. Special nod to the intro, by the way. If you get a chance, go on YouTube and check out the intro for this season for The Walking Dead. It's not long, very interesting, very unique. It visually just kind of hits you in about 17 seconds of ominous. But anyhow, yeah, let's go to the plot. So we start off with Alicia, Victor, and I know people say, for some reason, I don't know if I feel comfortable calling him Victor. I don't know if that's a crime or not. I'm going to own it right now, but moving forward, I'm going to call him Victor. Nick and Luciana waking up at the baseball stadium. We see now that is where their settlement's at. Now, to be clear, what we're seeing is happening before, as they blatantly make us aware at the beginning of the episode. So this is happening before the end of the premiere episode, where they all basically rolled up on John, Althea, and Morgan. So just to give you a sense of where we're at. They're waking up, they're getting breakfast, they're getting things settled for the day. We see Madison is having a conversation with a young girl named Charlie. And it's, again, very Rick Grimes type comparison and vibe here in the sense that she's trying to be the loving person, but also the survivalist leader. It's like, I want her to feel comfortable, I want her to get used to our settlement, but I also need to get some information from this little girl because whatever's out there either could be of danger to us or whatever happened to them out there, it could have been hit by a danger that's going to come our way. So again, I love the interactions between them. If you have a reason to suspect Charlie, you're going to be proven absolutely right. I don't think that's a big spoiler there. We see Madison, Alicia, Victor, and Luciana begin a search for Charlie's parents, and takes them out into a deserted area. Now, as this is going on, Nick is back at the encampment, and there's a great, I guess, great interaction, I guess is the best way to put it. I'm trying not to make it more than it might possibly be, but because Nick, we learn, hasn't been leaving the settlement for some time. And there's an exchange between Luciana and Madison as they're making their way out to go look for Charlie's parents, where Luciana's pushing this issue of, like, Nick really needs to leave. He needs to leave the encampment. And Madison, and it's interesting, she basically comes back at Luciana like, you weren't there at the dam. You didn't see how he was. He needs to find someplace safe and secure. And it's interesting because I think there was this, I'm his mother, so I'm watching out for him. And I think there was also this little dig at Luciana, and I think Nick makes the joke about it before they leave, about make sure she comes back this time. But I think there's still some underlying bitterness at the fact that Luciana left. I understand why she left, getting some background on this. But again, I think I understand why exactly she left, but still, you get a sense there's that level of animosity there. I think that's still going to be coming up. So Nick is back, he's tending to the crops, and he's finding that something's going on with the turnips are dying. But as all this is going on, he's also making friends with Charlie, who seems to have a very unique, interesting interest in the goings-on of the settlement, like how much food they have, how many people, things like that. So, again, if you're suspicious, you're going to be proven right. Madison jokes about Cole's crush on Victor, and I find it very interesting. Yeah, Cole, in the brief moment, and not knowing much about his character, but I already liked the bits and pieces that we've seen already in this episode. Madison, I've just become... She was the one character I liked from the very beginning, even when I strayed away from the series. But she, just in the first few minutes, I'm like, why can we please, I don't care how cheesy this is, there needs to be a scene where Madison and Rick are, like, working together or even talking. I don't care if it's by walkie-talkie. Granted, it's long-distance walkie-talkie. But I just think that would be fantastic. Their interactions and their strength working on something, I think would just be fantastic. So they get to the deserted town. There is a lot of stuff going on at the deserted town. We see that as they're going through that there seems to be oddly absent of both people and walkers. The stores have been picked clean. We see, and I believe it's Madison and Alicia, who make their way to one of the encampments by some of the oil tanks, and they see that the encampment's just been burnt to the ground just to a crisp. So again, it's feeling of, okay, something happened here, something went after this encampment. We also see the return of the mysterious flag markers with, I believe it's, I'm going to make sure I get this right, number 457. So it doesn't look like there's anybody there, except this is Madison we're talking about. Madison isn't going to stop looking until she checks through every corner of a place. And lo and behold, on the back of one of the trucks, she sees a fresh open can of food, which of course means somebody's alive. That somebody would be Naomi, played by Jenna Elfman, who, again, I gotta say, like Garret Dillahunt, and I'm going to have to practice his name because I know I just slaughtered it, so I'm going to apologize in advance. Maggie Grace and then Jenna Elfman. Again, these introduction of new characters that I'm just connecting with from the very start. 2 episodes in, I'm starting to learn the old. I'm starting to like the new. Again, another reason why I'm really big and high on this series so far. I've been really impressed. I feel like there are shows that talk about reinventing themselves, and then there's a show like this that really 2 episodes in seems to truly be reinventing itself. So Naomi basically gets the drop on Madison. And I didn't even realize at the time when I was watching it back again, the static bursts that Madison does to give off the signal that, hey, I'm in danger. Now, of course, Naomi just wants keys. We find out that Naomi doesn't have a kid, so clearly she is not connected to Charlie in any way, shape, or form. She just wants out. Now, the problem is, Lisa shows up, so that's another gun on her. But Elisa's like, hey, look, we'll give you the keys, anything like that, but do you want to join us? And then, of course, you got Luciana and Victor who show up, and, of course, she's freaking out, Naomi, and she hightails it, starts to run, makes it over the top of one of the oil refineries, and falls right in. And then we see just this horribly graphic and disturbing, it's just a Walker fight in oil as Luciana and Victor are trying desperately to empty out the container as much as possible. But it's just a brutal, rough scene. And again, if anybody doubts in any way, shape, or form how hardcore Madison is, all you got to do is look at the scene. But it's the beginning of a dynamic I think you see between Madison and Naomi that I hope follows through. Because I think it would be great if we give the Fear the Walking Dead 2 women that have kind of a friendship, sisterly bond in strong leadership, like we had with Rick and Daryl. I just think it would really suit well. And I like the chemistry between Jenna Elfman and Kim Dickens, the way they're working with one another. They're very impressed with this episode. Again, it pulled me in, and especially that scene where she's taking care of Nick afterwards, and I'll explain in a second why, where Naomi's taking care of Nick afterwards, and we find out that Naomi was a nurse, and she pediatrics and ER. And there's just the quiet moments where she conveys about her character that it just seems to fit in with the rest of the group. And it's just the way Madison kind of looks at her and how, obviously, as mom, seeing how this woman's taking care of her son, again, there's that nice connection there. And I love that moment where, Madison tries to seduce her into the settlement by the offerings of a hot shower. I just thought that was it's these little things. Hey, that's it's zombie apocalypse. Those little things are gonna get you to buy into it. Where I think it gets very interesting is while all of this is going on, we have Nick back at the encampment. Now, Nick's burning turnips, and all of a sudden he hears some music going on. And he's like, wait, there's music going off in the distance. This is kind of weird. So he goes to talk to some of the people in the encampment, and they're like, I don't think it's a good idea, because that's, again, we've already got people out there. Nick, you go out there. And they don't want to say to him, but it's like, Nick, you haven't really been going outside the walls recently. But Nick decides he's going to do it anyway and convinces Charlie. What a shock. He convinces Charlie to open up the gates. So Nick gets out there, Nick gets driving a little bit, and then Nick starts to suffer from some PTSD, and that's where we start to get some of the flashbacks to this dam scene and the explosion and everything in the third season. We start to get bits and pieces of what Madison was talking about earlier, because we start seeing Nick having some hardcore flashbacks while he is driving. As walkers are bouncing off the car left and right, he's just seeing nothing but dam explosions and everything. And of course, what ends up happening is he ends up just running right into a light pole, hitting his head, completely out of it, trying to stagger his way back to the settlement. And then guess what happens? Walkers start coming after him. Thank God Cole is a sharp shot, because Cole basically saves him. And when Cole can't save him, thankfully it's the returning Madison and crew that literally runs over the last walker that's about ready to take Nick, while Nick is bleeding from his head and just wandering aimlessly. That's a little rough scene. But again, it's curious to see the Nick dynamic, because even last episode, and granted I'm cheating a little bit because I've seen some of the preview pics, but you can tell already that with Morgan coming in and Nick coming in, you can know their paths are going to cross, because Nick is in need of some inner peace. Morgan is in need of some inner peace from a completely different way. And I don't know if we're going to have some kind of Mr. Miyagi, Daniel LaRusso Karate Kid thing going on, but I think we're going to have some Mr. Miyagi, Daniel LaRusso Karate Kid thing going on. But I think for both characters, it's needed, it's necessary, and I think Nick is the right person, character, and mindset for Morgan to try to quote-unquote save. So I'm very interested in seeing that. Now, after all this is taken care of, we've got, the crew goes out there to start pushing Nick's car back into the settlement, and guess what happens? Luciana's like, ditch the car, get back in here, there's somebody behind you. And lo and behold, this huge caravan of like pickup trucks and cars and things like that start showing up, and they just set up camp out in the baseball stadium parking lot right outside, and they make a very, very interesting introduction. Guy comes out with a bicycle and a music box and starts playing music and starts leading the walker onto a truck, and then climbs out and locks the walkers in there and marks them with a number 12. So we already know that this is the group that's been doing the flag markers. Now, what essentially are they after? Well, this is where it gets interesting. Their leader, Mel, who I'm going to have to call out right now. Mel feels like he's going to be an incredibly cool character, but right now Mel looks like he was a reject from a My Chemical Romance album cover. Just going to have to put it out there, okay? That outfit, I'm not even saying it's not sharp, but it was just one of those when you stepped out, it was just like, oh, okay, are you going to start performing the Black Parade or Helena or, yeah, that was the only thing that kind of caught me off guard. But Mel is in charge of a group that eventually we find out by the episode is called the Vultures, and I called it on Twitter. If you don't believe me, check it out. I swear I called it and I didn't even have any idea. It just seemed like they were. The reason why they're called the Vultures is because unlike the Saviors, they just kind of hang out and wait for you to die. They essentially sniff you out, sense that you're just basically going to be dying off, and wait for it to happen. He tells Madison, who thinks they were the ones responsible for taking out, firebombing that camp that they checked out, and says to him, like, no, we gave them the heads up. We told them that it wasn't going to work, that essentially if they stationed there was the chance of an explosion. It's like they didn't listen, so we essentially waited for them to die. We came in, we picked the store clean, we picked everything else clean, we herded up the walkers into one location, and we moved on. And essentially says to Madison, look, we know about your weevil problem. We know you don't have a lot of guns and things like that. And so essentially you have a choice. You can either join us and give us your stuff and you can just travel around with us. It'd be awesome. Or we can just wait for you guys to essentially turn on each other, die for it to fall apart, and we'll just come in and take whatever we want. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, how do they know all this stuff about the weevils and the turnips and there's not a lot of ammo and everything? Because, spoiler, Charlie was actually a spy. Now, at first I thought Mel was Charlie's dad, but Mel's more of a kind of a, I guess, father figure. What is it? Finnegan from Oliver Twist. That's kind of how I'm getting it in this regard. But you don't get a sense that Mel and the Vultures may necessarily be bad guys, or maybe Mel may necessarily be a bad guy. I don't know where this fits in all this. But the dynamic between Mel and Madison, that stubbornness and that standoffishness, I think is going to be very, very telling and very, very interesting. That's pretty much where we left it. A couple of points I want to take care of. Before we go back to the now, there is a very sweet moment, two of them actually, where Madison just keeps building onto the stadium. You know, it's how she started in the very beginning. And symbolically, they all pick up hammers and nails and start helping her. I loved it because it showed the sense of commitment, pride, and unity by the group. But the other thing I have to say is I'm also not quite sure if a lot of them believed in it or if it was like, hey, we let's not give up hope. But you get a sense in some of their faces that there was a little bit of concern, like, hey, is this guy right? Is this thing not working? And then the other moment is Luciana, while she was out, picked up a messed up but still readable copy of The Little Prince, and that Nick had asked to pick up for Charlie. And even though Charlie is proven to be essentially nothing more than a snitch and a scout for the Vultures, Luciana still walks outside the gates and leaves it by the truck as Charlie watches but doesn't say anything. So it's a very beautiful moment, very, very sweet moment, and it gives you that sense of, oh, Jesus, again, why can't everybody work together? Similar to The Walking Dead. Then we go to the now, which takes us back to the end of last episode. And again, series of circumstances make our initial group of heroes, Morgan, John, and Althea, not look so good because they have that white flag with the 51 on the back of it. And again, as you can tell, the Nick, Victor, Luciana, and Lisa, they're like, hey, this is you. You're the ones who've been doing this, everything like that. And they're like, no, this wasn't us. We're actually trying to figure out what the hell's been going on with this, and we're trying to see what's around. So the episode ends with them telling them, like, look, then you take us to where you got this marker from. And that's also the scene where we first find out that they are referred to as the Vultures. So again, it was one of those moments where I'm like, you leave in the SWAT truck, we don't know what's going on. And again, I felt very old school Walking Dead. And it's like, oh, can you just give me 10 or 15 more minutes? Which is probably some of the best praise that I can give a show like Fear the Walking Dead, especially into your 4th season, that you can feel like, okay, I've got more interest in 2 episodes in the mid-run of a show than I did in the first couple episodes when it was giving me the opportunity to kind of get to know it and used to it. So kudos to the cast and creative behind Fear the Walking Dead Season 4 so far. Doing a really, really great job. Again, thank you guys for joining me. Next week is Good Out Here. It looks very action-packed. I believe I should have the trailer posted down below for you guys to take a look at it. But again, thank you guys for joining me for this Fear the Walking Dead review and recap. Excellent episode. If I'm giving it a score, I'd say I'd give it a good solid 8.5 on the John Cusack scale. Again, just 2 for 2. If you're new, trust me, give it a shot. You're always going to have your naysayers. But again, to me, I never found Fear the Walking Dead as good a viable replacement for when The Walking Dead wasn't on. This, I find it to be a very smooth transition. And again, one of the highest compliments I can really pay the cast and creative because they're doing a great job so far. So, again, my name is Ray Flook, television beat writer for Bleeding Cool. Thank you for joining me. Make sure you check out all the cool stuff we have on bleedingcool.com this week, and I will be seeing you on the inner tubes. Take care, folks.